Danny, thank you very much for making the time to meet here with me at KATZ Deli.
Welcome.
I really appreciate it. And
you guys know which shoes you know in the bathroom? Oh yeah. Right in here.
Those two doors.
yeah. So this is a live conversation. We're not going to edit anything except for stuff that Danny may not want to put it on tape. He was just giving me a background of all the changes that he's seen in his neighborhood. We're down on East Houston Street. All the influences basically in music that I guess he grew up with, and I'm sure everyone knows a little bit about Danny's history, about his father owning a few places where he's been exposed to the music, and actually also your mom was involved in music as well, right?
Right, she was a jazz singer with some of the members from Chet Baker's band.
Excellent. So, Danny, is it safe to say that you've been fortunate to be exposed to just a vast amount of different type of music by your dad and your mom?
Yeah, it's safe to say that. I would say that I probably took a lot of it for granted, that not only through them, but through this area and the time that I was growing up, I probably took it quite for granted that these things were just happening to me all the time around me, that I'm still in awe today, but at the time, I guess I really just thought it was regular.
Give me an example of what you mean.
Well, on a regular basis, it would seem I would run into all kinds of music icons, whether it be in the Ninth Circle, I met Jimi Hendrix, I met John Lennon, Yoko Ono, or Janis Joplin. I mean, as a little kid, I'm serving brunches there on Sunday, like taking orders and stuff, and I'm serving Janis Joplin. She would come in, several times. And I remember I said to my father, I want to take a picture of her, and he said, you do, and you're fired. She didn't come here for that. But
so your dad knew how to keep things very...
And he had more than just them on the street. I'd walk around the street and you just run into different, music groups, whether it was the Stones or it was like Love and Spoonful or, just like the Doors or some group just walking around and you'd spot them. And it was very casual. It wasn't like everybody running into them for autographs.
Right.
And in my building where I live, on my floor, Ian Underwood lived, who was part of Mothers of Invention. So I was constantly in the elevator with Frank Zappa and Mothers of Invention. They were really out there. And the guy who lived above me was the vice president of Polydor Records.
Wow.
So he's the one who introduced me to James Brown and get early promos from him. And on the top floor of our building, who was also a friend, was Sid Bernstein, who was a top promoter at the time. He was the promoter who brought the Beatles to Shea Stadium the first time, first time they came to America. And he had a group called the Rascals. And when my mother needed a job, she got a job as the fan club president for the Rascals. So, we were friends with them, but there was also all this connection with the Rascals. And we happened to have a piano in our house, and Rascals would always come knocking on our door like, like, Miss Krivit, can we use your piano for a minute? And all those hits they had were banged down on our piano.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
And I never touched the piano.
Right.
That's the kind of thing I took for granted. Like, I just thought this is regular, The Ninth Circle was also a big influence because as opposed in this period of time, the 60s, if you had music, it was generally live bands or a jukebox. It was really pre-DJ time. And jukeboxes were mostly, run by mafia kind of situations where, the record companies had to pay a little to get their song songs in these places, and it made national hits this way, not just radio. And all the songs were regimented for radio at clocking in less than 2 minutes and 45 seconds, and you had this really just a limited list of pop hits that you could choose from for your jukebox. So maybe you had 3 times the amount of what would fit on there to choose from, which, you know, people get tired of that stuff. Very quickly, it's like, would I even want to spend a quarter to hear this song again? It's that limited. And so my father found a place on 10th Avenue that would press an individual 7-inch of anything he wanted for $10. And he was, you know, big jazz head, and he got all these hot records and album cuts put on 7-inch and put on the jukebox. And people didn't know why, but they all of a sudden gravitated to the Ninth Circle as this is this hot music place. Like, it's different than other places because there was it was like having a hot DJ, you know. And so there was a lot of music people that gravitated there. A lot of jazz, a lot of poets and, you know, writers. And again, working there as a kid, I kind of took this for granted. I thought this is how things are.
Right.
You know, I didn't know the jukebox was different.
Right.
You know, I learned that later. And
did anything ever cross your mind, like, you know, something special's happening here, or interesting in?
I was reminded by other people that it was very special, and I thought it was special just to me because I liked it, and I had complete reign. I could do anything there. It was great, you know.
Right.
And it was an unusual place to begin with because it's the heart of Greenwich Village, and it's a steakhouse bar, and it had it was famous for having these barrels of peanuts that in the shell that you would eat, and it was a gimmick to make you thirsty. But basically, in the '60s, there's a lot less hygiene going on, and everybody's a smoker, and instead of cleaning everything perfectly, you have a lot of sawdust on the floor, and these ashtrays are full of cigarette stuff. You would end up just throwing the ashtrays on the floor with the sawdust. Instead of mopping or sweeping, you just pour more sawdust on and sweep it around. And it was all mixed with peanut shells, you know.
Oh my gosh.
And it had an atmosphere. It kind of felt like you were in a barn, you know.
Right.
And but the peanuts were kind of a cool aspect of it. And I mean, I felt the Ninth Circle was cool. I just didn't know how much.
Right. Now, how did you embark into playing music there?
Well, I had already become like a music person at a young age. I was very into music a few years earlier before I started DJing. And I was already kind of making my room like a hangout for the neighborhood with my friends. And I had a pretty big sound system, and I was very into collecting records, and I got a mixer, and I was mixing kind of for my friends. And
now, was this based on seeing somebody else do it? Were you going out?
Well, it was more based on just like I couldn't get enough music. I wanted continuous. So first I had one turntable, then I was doing like pause edits with a set player, and then I had 2 turntables, and I had kind of heard about this and stuff, but it was nothing like, you know, what you think of today. It was more just continuous music rather than long mixes and on beat and stopping the record and all that.
Right.
It'd be more like a radio blend.
Gotcha.
And really just continuing a vibe. And like I had everyone's attention, I wanted to keep it. And it was my first entrance into that. And I was making tapes for myself, and when my father changed his downstairs restaurant into a disco because like a year or 2 earlier the Stonewall had the riots, and the whole Greenwich Village had went really overnight to like, oh, this is really gay central of America. And bar, like the restaurant chain, to a disco, and overnight it was jam-packed and charged admission, and he said, you know what, we tried having DJ here, but because it's an old brownstone, we can't get the turntables to stand still. Like, everybody's dancing, it's just all over the place. So we're just programming tapes, and we could, you know, it's your entrance, we could program your music there too. And so that's what I did. I submitted a whole bunch of tapes and that they would get played there. And once in a while I would actually play the cassettes there. Like they would, they had 2 cassette players and a mixer, and you would take a couple of songs from this tape or that tape, and you would just keep the vibe going. And but I was 14, and this was a hardcore gay nightclub, so my mother wasn't too crazy about that. I didn't happen that often.
Gotcha.
And then after that, I opened Ones, and that I really full on got into.
So do you think that programming these tapes gave you an insight of programming or setting yourself up for playing at the next venue and eventually dealing with different people, right? Because your goal as a DJ is to try to captivate them, you know, you can't please all, but at least you want to feed them something that might interest them mentally, you know, and dance. Did that help you, all these music around you and what you were doing back in that time?
Well, everything helped me, including that. But there's nothing that compares to live experience with a lot of people on a regular basis, because you have a good crowd, you have your crowd, you have other people.
Exactly.
You have a bad day, a good, you know, it's like you have to be able to move with that.
Right.
And I think early on I wasn't really understanding all these differences, and I was making tapes for there, so it was a fixed thing. There really wasn't, if the tape, this part of the tape wasn't working out, that probably wouldn't get played again, and the other part of the tape would, over and over. But once I started playing at Ones, I was starting to feel the pressure of a regular basis. You know, not everybody's here to hear me. Like, these people just came here, they have a set thing in their mind, and I'm stuck with it. And I have to make everybody happy, period. So, I'm playing what I consider to be hot music that I'm just really into, and I'm really passionate about that.
So it's self.
Yeah, I'm very passionate about the music. This is good music because I love it.
Right.
And you know what? My friends love it. I'm reinforced. It's good music. To this day, I don't feel I was wrong about that. But I guess I would play things that I was really into and not really read the crowd always. And I remember there was a particular instance when I was really into City, Country, City by War.
Yep.
And I thought, God, this is just, it's monumental how it takes you somewhere and the level of, you know, musicianship it is. So, musicianship. And I'm playing that, and people are coming up to me, including the manager, going, "What are you doing? Like, you know, you need to leave this at home. Like, why would you bring this here? Like, you know, this is wrong music for here." And you know, I'm playing it from the beginning to the end. I'm not, you know, like working at like a club record kind of thing. And I kind of was my first real wall in this situation, and I was really like doubting my own taste, like going, maybe I really don't have a handle on what people need. I'm just beginning, and you know, maybe I don't really understand what it takes. And soon after that, I had my first experience when I went to the loft. And I walk into the loft, and within seconds of me walking in, City, Country, City comes on. And I didn't think much about it as it came on, like, oh, I love this song, whatever. but people were running to the dance floor. It was the peak of the night. The entire night that I was there, that was the peak of the night. The entire record, like from beginning to end, it was a peak. And this was peak time in the loft, so it was really a happening moment. And it was my first experience with the loft. It was really different from anywhere else. And kind of a dream version of what I wanted to play for or what I wanted to be into. And it really taught me right then about, you know what? It's not me, it's not the record, I'm not always going to be so fortunate to play for the right people. And I'm going to do my best to cultivate an audience that is the people I want to play for. And the people that gave me crap about that record, I might get stuck with them once in a while, but that's not what I want to play for. That's not what I'm in this for. And it was really eye-opening to me and helped me like forge my own like taste that, you know, I'm not just playing what the hits are or whatever. I mean, my taste was very popular. Like I played a lot of hits, but I didn't play them because they were on the radio. You know, like, oh, that's a hit, I got to play that. Right. And later on, there were periods where I got in trouble because I didn't play certain hit songs. I thought, you know what? It's very popular. It's well made. It really sucks. If I have to play this once, it's going to bother me. And I remember in particular, in the height of disco, Born to Be Alive was a really sore spot for me where I just said, you know what? There's so much great music I love right now that I could play. I don't want to open the door to playing this song that I'm not playing anything else that I don't like. Right. Why do I need to play this? I can do a whole night, all week, every night without playing that song. But the owner of the place got really upset and was like, you need to be playing this. And I'm like, it didn't work out, and I ended up losing my job over it.
Wow.
And, I remember that from that point, I realized there were times when I would have to choose, is this a point to take a stand on, or will I bend here? Like, some jobs were just jobs. I played whatever the fuck they needed. I don't care. And then other jobs, I felt like, no, you hired me to do something that I do, and that's why you hired me, and no, that doesn't work, When I played at Roxy, the first owner basically dictated a lot of stuff. But the second owner opened up a little bit, and he started those hip-hop things on the weekend, and I was doing really well there. But he also had this bad habit of coming in, and this is a couple years after they were hits, but they still were knee-jerk crowd response songs. He would come up and say, play Le Freak or YMCA, and be like, I have to play them, and everybody yelled. But you know that right after they yelled, they'd be like, God, he played that crap. Right. So my nights would, on the best night in Roxy, which is a huge club, made for roller skating, I'd get 300 or 400 people. That would be a busy night there, which seems like skating, that's like 600 people dancing.
Gotcha.
Well, Monday night was the only night of the week he didn't come.
The owner?
The owner. And I never got that, you have to play these. Oh, wow. And I started playing what I play. And sure enough, on Mondays, like within a couple months, it went from like 30 or 50 people to over 1,000. Wow. And it was really like, I knew what to play for roller skaters, and I was doing it. So he's looking at the books, he's like, what's going on here? I got to come down and see what this is. So he comes in finally. They told me he was coming. It took him like a month to kind of finally come. And he goes, he was just amazed. Like, it's a money-making night. Like, what's going on? And he's like, I don't know what you're doing, but, this is my best night. Like, wow. It's incredible. I'm just going to sit here and watch for a little bit. And then he comes over to me like a little while later, and he goes, all right, this is great. I'm just trying to get a handle on this and understand it. I always ask you for YMCA and the Freak, to just get the crowd going. Could I ask you to do that now? And I said, well, look, you're the boss. You want to ask me to do that? If you're telling me to do it, I'll do it. So, I have to. If you're asking me, I'm going to politely say, no, don't do that.
Right.
We've got a good thing here. That's wrong. He goes, oh, you're right. No, let's not do that. And he sits down. He's just thinking for a little bit. And then he stands up. He goes, look, I know it's not those songs, but it's still the right premise. What is the song, if I said, play the song that's going to get everybody nuts right now? What is that song? I need to know. And I said, well, you probably don't know it, but the song right now is Heartbeat.
Wow. Tanya Deli.
Yeah, for roller skating. And goes, no, I don't know that. So I put it on, and I could see his face go, really? Yeah. But in the same breath, he's looking around, and everybody's flying. I mean, they're like screaming, and it's wow. Goes, it's all yours. I never would have known that,
Wow.
And then next thing you know, I get a phone call from the other DJ who's playing High Energy on Wednesdays. He goes, what'd you do? It was bad enough when he asked me for YMCA and La Freak. Now I'm playing High Energy, and he's asking for Heartbeat.
I want to pause you before you continue, because you hit a spot, High Energy.
Yeah.
What was your take on that style of music?
Well, I think it was a little more complicated. That from the time I started, I noticed that the realm of music and club music was a little wide open. It was dance music, stuff that made you dance, and it didn't have as many labels. You might call this rock, or you might call that soul.
Absolutely.
But there's a lot less labels.
I agree.
And as time went on, things got separated. And one of the things I noticed was when I first started, like I said, the Ninth Circle had this thrust because of the gay rights movement. In the beginning, the whole thrust of the gay movement in club life was huge. And really, for the early 70s, if it was not a gay club in New York, it really was not a hip club.
Gotcha.
All the best clubs were gay clubs.
Right.
And they were cutting edge. They played all the new cutting edge music, very open and very musical. But then as it got towards the second half of the 70s and towards 80, really flipped. And the gay clubs were getting less and less open and playing a very regimented like specific kind of music and not open to much at all. And it had this genre called high energy. So instead of thinking, oh, this is high energy music like for everyone, it was kind of a synonym for this is like the gay club music today, which is high energy, a little light. It was a little less soulful, not very bassy. The message and the vibe was very light.
Would you say it was also the beginning of what you would call the electronic sound, right? Because High Energy was a little bit more...
Not exactly. I thought the electronic sound creeped in a whole bunch of music, which I thought one of the biggest turning points in electronic to me, I mean, there were two, was I Feel Loved on a Summer, which David Bowie has a quote like of running into his manager's office saying, I've just heard the future.
Wow.
And then, but I didn't think of that in terms of there's going to be more of this. I thought it was unique. And then when Kraftwerk hit, I I liked numbers,
Right.
but as a genre, I thought, God, I saw these guys live. This is really boring to me.
Wow,
And because as a performance, I think today it would work, but back then it was strikingly
Right, you have bands.
stagnant.
Right,
you know,
sure.
they're standing in front of their
Right,
computers,
right,
basically.
of course.
And you know, it just didn't move me. But the track moved me, and I thought, well, this is great. I guess there's going to be more of this. And in a blink of an eye, the next thing was Planet Rock.
Right.
And you saw that, okay, well, that opened up that
Totally
genre of
different
music.
stuff, sure.
But it also opened the door to electro to me.
Right.
That from there you had, at first you're just calling it freestyle, but really all this electro happened, and then the next two big things that happened was I was used to hearing major groups having live bands. They could afford it to have real musicians, and when I heard Prince and Michael Jackson's albums change to okay, live they have real bands, but on the
Studio.
record it's a drum machine. Noticeably, it's not pretending to be a real drum, it's clearly a drum machine. I thought, this is a turning point.
Wow.
You know.
Now, let me, if you don't mind, pick your brain a little bit about Casablanca, for instance, right? And producers like Giorgio Moroder, they seem to be on the cutting edge and kind of ahead of their time, right? And it's still considered disco, right?
Yeah.
So that sound that they brought out, how do you think that influenced a lot of what came out after the whole Casablanca theme and just producing wise? Because I mean, when you compare a Casablanca to a salsa, right, totally different worlds. To me, salsa is just that, is orchestras, you know, really live music being put together with a vocalist. It's kind of really shaped up. And you have Giorgio Moroder, which is more, I'm taking a chance on an electronic sound to see how I can develop it, layer it.
Well, for me, two differences I would notice with both of them. First of all, salsa to me was, I don't know, 70-80% of salsa was MFSB.
Right.
I mean, it was completely Philly-oriented, majority of the music they had. So that, rather than just say orchestra, I'd say specific orchestra.
Gotcha.
It was a very specific sound, and it was really it was a little lower than Philly International, but it was a much higher level of standard and studio work than the disco environment like the rest of the labels. Casablanca was a big company when they came out. They hit big when they hit into disco. They had a lot of money to work with, and they were very competitive. There were a few companies that were really competing, and I thought that Giorgio Moroder was a big part of it, but not as big as MFS was to salsa.
I got you.
There was a huge amount of bands, which were studio bands, like studio musicians, but not on the level of Philly, and they weren't drum machines. It was really what I would call typical disco, which is really in the height of disco was a studio band that maybe couldn't perform live, and they were trying to be as much like a machine as they could. They were trying to have like that Cerrone kind of drum,
right,
which when you put Cerrone next to a drum machine these days, it's all over the place.
Right.
I mean, it's not syncopated like you would think. But back then, the people who weren't really ready for disco, I mean, they were complaining this music is mechanical,
right,
you know. But it certainly was very different from South Soul. I thought George Romero had a good part in it, but Casablanca had a lot of music under their belt that wasn't that.
Now, comparing arrangement-wise, right? South Soul, I mean, you know, you have Lolita Holloway singing and a lot of stuff. It's just, to me, is more R&B oriented, right? So you can kind of understand the lyrics, relate to the lyrics, right? And actually see a whole composition of the song, right? You mentioned Cerrone, for instance, Give Me Love. You know, it's a song to me that you have to enjoy it, but it's enjoyed on a different level by different people. To me, it's more, it's unexplainable, but it's a different composition of a song, but it still hits. It still hits the core when listened to now. How would you put your own personal touch into that stuff?
Well, as an example, Give Me Love, I think that's definitely a really good song. But yeah, I can't compare the whole Philly International South Soul group to any of these disco hits, because these guys were at the top level. You really couldn't compare anyone in the industry to their level of playing. They were tight. They were really professional, and they had a certain class that they brought to their productions and writing. It was R&B based,
yep,
but they come from a very positive message writing for the community. And I thought a lot of disco was the opposite. It was heathenistic, you know, and
Seven Deadly Sins. That group was,
you know,
no, they're out there.
It's endless and bottomless.
Right.
It really, it goes to the point where a lot of these things are, you know, heathenists and whatever, but they also shared the same space with a lot of really money-oriented, stupid kind of things that were, you know, shooting themselves in the foot in the industry. I mean, things like Disco Duck, you can point to as this is a key point in people who rallied behind Disco Sucks. This is a song they could grab onto.
Right.
And there was a whole series of things behind that, like whether it was Disco Mickey Mouse or Disco Ethel Merman, or, you know, I have to like Do You Think I'm Sexy, Rod Stewart.
Yep.
But when it came out, it was like, you know what? Rod Stewart is not loved enough for people to roll over with that change. It was a sellout. So the disco people liked it, and the rock people hated Rod Stewart from that point on. He kind of had to change his style after that because he lost his own core audience.
Right.
I thought that, you know, there was a lot of really bad message and stupid message stuff going on in disco because there was a lot of money to be made and there was nobody really policing anything. I thought South Soul had some borderline stuff too. Philly International was very tight in how they ran things and set a standard, and you didn't see any of that stuff there.
Oh. Let's jump into, since we're talking about producers, how did you get into editing? What drew you to editing? How did you get involved in it? And comparing editing back when you did it as to the tools and, you know, pretty much what's available for someone to edit now, just how different is it and what do you prefer? Because to me, editing and listening to, you know, KTU, like when they had their Battle of Disco DJs, you had a lot of DJs using editing, right, during those times. Animal Diaz, you know, you had Dynamic Duo, and you clearly heard in their mixing it's pretty much splicing. And later on, I actually learned the skill of taking the tape and, you know, cutting it and putting it together. So for those who do not know, it's a pretty lengthy process to try to get a 2-minute, you know, edit of a song. So
well, from my perspective, I kind of fell into it because of the time I grew up in. You don't think of it now, but in the entire 60s, if you had everyone had a Playboy magazine. The ideal Playboy, like his definition of what he does, was, you know, the robe and the pipe. But when it came to music, you were supposed to have a reel-to-reel player.
Right.
Because a record
that was standard.
You had to choose the songs and change the record when you're supposed to be, you know, Playboy and doing your thing. So you would make a 6-hour reel or whatever that you would just play continuous of this set, and you would run that. Now, it seemed very sophisticated, but at the same time, I was like, you know what? It's not putting in a cassette. There's, you know, you got to put a leader on the tape. You got to thread the tape and all this. A little bit of professionality there, but it was a little common. And in clubs, they had reel-to-reels. So from an early start, I knew how to put leader on tape and edit for that reason. And I had a reel-to-reel player. So I would record my sets or record things on reel, and if someone gave me a song, I might want to record it on a reel-to-reel rather than play a cassette. And so I got used to the genre of reel-to-reels. And when I first started doing my remixes, I felt, you know, other people are doing this, and I've been in this for a while. This is my way to open up my career, getting to remixing. But my first remixes were pretty low level budget-wise and favors, and I never dreamed that when I would walk out of the mix, I'd go, rather than help me, this might actually hurt me. It's better that I hadn't done anything than do a bad mix, you know. And my first mix was for Will Sokolov, who owns Sleeping Bag. And he's a childhood friend, and he asked me, you know, I'm just starting, and I went to some people, and it's a lot of money, maybe you could do me a favor, I know you could do it. So I did this mix for him, and all through the mix, I would say, could we do this to the engineer, and you know, and the guy would have this comment like back to me, don't worry, we'll fix that in editing later. I just rolled with it. Later came, I know I couldn't edit, you know, more than the leader, but I knew what a bad edit was, and this guy was wasting our precious time with this bad edit. And it took our whole time just to get this edit reasonably correct, which, you know, left me with a mix I wasn't that crazy about. It was adequate, but I didn't get to do the dub or the special like what I'm there for. So I'm walking out of there going, God, I can't believe this. And a friend of mine was a top editor for WBLS, Jonathan Ferry. He used to do all those BLS things in between the music. And I went over to his house and I told him the story, and he's like, you know, you got a reel, you know how to edit the leader, like, here, I'll show you I'll show you a few key things and you're good to go. Like, don't think about it. And so he taught me some good things, some things, and the next mix I had was very similar, same problem, and the guy was saying, I'll fix it editing later. And later comes, and I never thought it could happen, but it was the same thing. The guy couldn't edit. And somehow I wasn't aggressive enough, and I didn't jump in and do the edit. So I walk out with another, now I got two mixes that, not bad, but they're not helping me. And I go home, and this is at the time when I'm playing at Roxy, and I was hearing DST play a lot, cut up a lot there. And I remember cutting up funky drummer, James Brown, in a way that I could never do that. It was really expertise the way he did it. And I thought, okay, let me try some editing here. I can't do any worse than this guy. I mean, and I played around with funky drummer, and it came very natural. And I made this edit, and which turned into Feeling James, and it really came about that way, that the mixes weren't working out, and I did already have a little bit of familiarity with tape. So, I mean, we would always run tape in a club just for an effect or anything,
Right.
you know. So it kind of pushed me in that way. And once I started doing those, I ran into a guy who was doing the Big Apple medleys. And he was a friend of a friend, and he said, "You got any medleys?" And you know, and I did this Feeling James, and I did Rock the House, and I gave him those. And you got any more? And I did this Sly Stone one, and then I did The Love Is the Message. And by then I realized, you know what? I'm into the editing, but I'm really not into the medley thing. I want to just focus on a song. And he was just, whatever you got, I'll work with, because he really thought I was doing good for him. And so he would come to me and say, you know, people ask him for this song, have you done anything with that? And I go, you know, sometimes I'd say yes or no. But he'd say, we got to figure out a B-side. So really, all the edits I was working on that would come out like that, I would kind of pick another song that I thought, well, this is not what people are asking for, but it's really cool. Maybe I can interject something here. So a lot of those early edits, the you know, small label edits, they would have these songs that I, you know, was kind of interjecting, which now maybe not seems so left to center, but then it was like I was turning a lot of people onto them, you know.
Were you getting paid at that time as well, or was it mainly just for recognition and the opportunity?
I mean, I wasn't looking for much, and I didn't get much. I got basically an editing fee.
Okay.
So I would get maybe, for something like Love Is a Message, I got $50.
Okay.
And I'd say, well, and give me a box of records to give to my friends.
I got
you know?
Right.
And whenever I needed records, I get them.
Right. I do think that around that time there was a distributor out in Jersey that was doing that, a lot of the bits and pieces stuff. And I had shopped one around, I'm talking about maybe 83, and I think all they were paying was about $250 after that, you know? So I'm sure that the guy who was distributing and selling it was probably making a little bit more than, you know, the person actually making
Not a little bit
the
more.
actual it.
This guy was making a living.
Okay, gotcha.
So he wasn't in the money, but he didn't do anything else.
I got
This
you.
was his living.
Right. So, what was your next progression after DJing a little bit, having the Roxy, getting your foot into editing? What was next for you? What did you feel was the next thing for you to venture into?
Well,
because I'm sure around that time, right, you had, what years are we talking about? 83, 84, early 80s?
Mid-80s.
So you already had a lot of major clubs coming around. You had Garage, you
There were
had...
periods, you know, I think during this first editing part, like in the maybe 82 or 3 area, I might have only been playing at the roller rink, and I was supporting myself as a DJ, so it was a little tough. I was you know, maybe doing some more edits and kind of just making ends meet. So I was really looking to work as much as I could. So I went from kind of almost out of work and doing, you know, jobs as a lighting guy, whatever, to working 7 nights a week. Like I was just taking every job I could. And so pretty much all through the 80s, I would generally work 3 or 4 clubs a week. And last time I was working 6 or 7 nights a week. And it wasn't a lot of money, but I was making a good living and getting by and paying my own way. and I was getting more into doing the edits and a little more deciding what I wanted to work on and then offering it to different people. And I was getting more offers from actual labels to do things. I remember I'm in the Paradise Garage, and this guy comes over to me, goes, guy introduces me to him, and he goes, you did the Phil and James, right? You know, and I said, yeah, you know, like, yeah, I did that. And he's like, I work for Polydor with James Brown, and I was like, oh, like, yeah, and he goes, well, no, don't get me wrong, I really like what you did. Could you do that for us? Like I'm doing a project with James Brown, could you do a funky drummer edit for us? And I was like, sure, and it kind of opened the door. Like, now I'm getting more jobs from the actual artists and labels, and I would occasionally get some mixes and did a little production during that period, but I was really doing a lot of editing, and I think I was starting to really cultivate, instead of just working every night of the week, I was starting to cultivate different jobs that really propelled me, you know, and
right.
That were really successful. And the roller skating rink, I worked in Laces for 10 years. I basically had turned into the premier roller skating DJ. I had a huge following for roller skating. And then I was, towards the end of the 80s, I was working at Trax, which was where David DePino ended up going after the Garage. And that was a huge underrated club.
Right.
And soon after that, Sound Factory Bar, and then
right.
Body and Soul. That's how things were sort of progressing. And when Body and Soul ended at Vinyl, the weekly party, I started 718 Sessions.
Sure.
And I guess during this time, I mean, probably mid-90s, I had already started with a computer, and I pretty much abandoned, as soon as I started computer editing, I abandoned reel-to-reel editing. I like the sound of the reel-to-reel better, but because you would kind of go back and tighten things up a little, you would hear the tape getting worn off in your hands, that it was very hard to do repetitive things and keep the quality.
Gotcha.
So the computer was making things a little more of a better standard. So that was the big change that happened with that.
Oh, excellent. You mentioned about Paradise Garage. Did you ever feel in your time like you didn't want to continue anymore? Did you ever struggle? Did you ever want to give up? Because I know so many new DJs, so many new producers, people that are just venturing without really knowing how difficult it really is nowadays to put on a label, to try to get a party going, to create a following. I think it's just changed so much. Did you ever say to yourself, you know what, maybe this is just not what I want to do? And what helped you move forward?
I probably never actually got to that point, because even when things were hardest and kind of post Disco Sucks, like soon after that, I was really lost in jobs, and a lot of guys I knew who were big were doing other work. I mean, they had to do things to survive. They'd stop DJing, or they would have day jobs, and had to do other things to make money. But I stuck with it, and even though times were hard, at the hardest, this is what I wanted to do. I had a passion to do it. I didn't want to do anything else. And I think the music had come into me that strong that I really didn't see myself in any other role. I had to be in the music industry for sure, but what I was doing was where I wanted to be. And all through the years, after that, really never wavered. I feel like I have different opinions about where the music industry is, or what I like about this, or
Right.
how well I'm doing in this club, or whatever. But it's never changed my enthusiasm of this is where I want to be. I want to make my situation the best it can be, but
Right.
I don't want to do something else.
So let's talk a little bit more about the change that happened to the music, to the scene here in New York. For a long time, I've been really trying to understand what happened. You know, we went from being, I think, one of the best places, one of the leaders in not only nightclubs, but in music and radio station and programming. And then it just died for me. It just, I would say 2-3 years, and things just went sour to where we are now, where I feel that you no longer have a main party on a main night, and a main night to me means like a Friday or a Saturday night, right? It seems that house music, and please, you know, let me know if you don't agree, it's kind of taking a backseat to whatever else is going. And I know this is kind of like a loaded question because so many things play into what's been happening now, from clubs to owners to bottle services to the way people go out to the way the youth thinks of a night going out now as compared to how maybe we thought about it. You know, to me, I came in 70s, 80s where, you know, Xenon, Studio 54, Garage, and that to me was just not, I didn't look at it as going in there a dance. I looked at it as like, this is a show. Look at the sound, look how powerful it sounds, the lights, the people. So I took those nightclubs in differently, you know, and studio to me was a theatrics place. You know, you came in and you got hit with so many different things, but it was off for me. Nowadays, you go into a bar that's got, you know, minimal sound system that looks great, but that's all you're getting for $25-100, you know, to sit at a VIP area. What do you think really changed?
Well, it really is about money. And I guess because in the 80s when I got into video, I got into a lot of nostalgic video dancing. It made me ask questions about, wait a minute, these people, these were the kids of that period. This
Gotcha.
is what they did.
Yep.
And when I look back at the 40s, the 50s, and so on, you know, 30s, all the way up to present, you know, there's this underground scene, you know, that basically went to clubs and went out dancing. And it had a certain stableness of people need to make money, but they make a living, not a killing. And I thought when the disco era hit, definitely the KATZ. When the disco era hit, it was kind of a fluke. People weren't expecting it. The record labels and companies, you know, they were doing well with the rock and stuff and pop. They really didn't understand it. And as it started selling, they're like reaching out, wait a minute, you know, there's a lot of money going on here. How do we control this? How do we, you know, make more of it even? And I thought they were exploiting it to the fact where they had exploited the industry, and this was kind of the beginning of the end for them, because the companies got to a size at that point where they were really at their largest, and they shot themselves in the foot with exploiting it to a ridiculous extent, to the point where something like Disco Sucks could happen. As silly as it when you look at it, as it seems, that little thing in a football field, whatever, could actually demolish the industry. Well, from that point, there were a couple of things to, you know, okay, we could grab onto this, grab onto that, but it was kind of a downhill slide from that point. And so instead of thinking of artist development and we're going to do things on a long-term basis, everything's about now, like quick money, quick decisions, bad decisions. The way they embrace CDs, instead of a convenience or an addition, it was, how do we milk the industry for this ridiculous amount of money? They're going to sell something that costs less for more money and make you buy your entire collection over again and tell you that collection is, you don't want records anymore, that's antique, that's worthless now. And it went that route from CDs to, downloads, and it's the point now where, they've killed themselves. And on the other side of this was the club industry itself suffered another money-making greed, was the whole influx of renting versus co-op. I grew up in Greenwich Village, which is the poster child for co-ops. The first co-op started in Greenwich Village. I saw this happening, and Greenwich Village was alive, vibrant. People had to travel around the world to get there and feel what was going on there. And you go there today, or even 10 years ago, it was already evaporated, where it's just nothing. There's no energy, there's no anything happening. It's stale, like it never happened. Because the renters left. It's all owned and co-op, where it's something for people to, like buy and sell. And once that started, people point to Rudy Giuliani as this terrible mayor who, influxed the whole, bad, like killing dancing and stuff in the city, and push these laws. I have to say that almost any other mayor in his position would have done something similar, because the city was changing. Now you went from an entire city of renters where to the police and the people in charge view renters as transients. They want to hear from the landlord. They don't want to hear from some guy who might not be there next month. And they don't even view him as a taxpayer. It's just a transient. And they really looked at the club owners. These people have a stake. I'm friends with the clubs, unless it's a bad club, before I'm friends with these tenants. And so you call them, complain about something, we just laugh pretty much. We just, wouldn't do anything for you. And it turned overnight to, okay, now it's not renters, it's owners. Everyone's a landlord. Everyone's paying the taxes that pay your salary. So now the police and the mayor, everyone is catering to what the block association, what these group of landlords want. Wow. And it slowly changed to, you know what, we don't want this on our block. We don't want this here. We need more space. This is not going to be zoned for this. It's all residential. Wow. It changed like that in a decade. Where it was slow enough that you didn't really know, and you point your finger at these other things. Oh, it's Giuliani, it's always this, it's the industry of this or whatever, or it's this bad thing. And in reality, it's just this greed of a certain culture that came in. It was real estate market versus record industry, lack of foresight. I mean, these people were greedy, so greedy that they lucked into the disco era and they milked it to a point where they killed themselves. I mean, they killed their companies based on the disco era.
Right.
Big companies. And you have these big executives, just like you hear about big executives today with these companies.
Sure.
They're overpaid, and it's bloated so that the company can't make money.
Right.
And there's no streamlining or whatever. It's just cutting. It's making stupid decisions. And so today, it's like they're lucky there is what there is for all the bad decisions. And as far as the city goes, now you have a mayor like Bloomberg who he comes into office, I'm going to do this for the clubs. Well, as bad as Giuliani was, he's straightforward. I knew what Giuliani was doing. I knew what to expect from him. Bloomberg is the exact opposite. He'll do not what he says. And he says, okay, I want for clubs, we're going to get rid of the cabaret law. Well, he has a radio show where he talks about his views of what he wants the city to be. And on the show, he gets a little more into detail than he says in public, like where he talks about, I'm going to do away with the cabaret law, and I'm going to have these individual licenses. And basically, I want the city to close at 1 a.m. And you need special licenses to stay open later, and this. And quickly, people calling me up, oh, support this, kill the cabaret law thing. Giuliani, Bloomberg is on, and I would enlighten them. I go, I'll tell you this, it's bullshit, that's why. And so it died. Luckily, that died. But almost immediately after it died, he had an alternative plan. He wanted control of this thing. He wanted control of the clubs. And he started two things at the same time. The 311 number, where you could make complaints to the police, but anonymously, because 911, you had to say who you were. Now you can make a complaint 1,000 times and not say who you are.
Wow.
That's 1,000 different people from one phone.
Right.
And so at the same time he did this, granted, it's a good thing not to have no smoking, but he did it in a way that was very motivated to his needs. He didn't go through the community and take its time and make its natural course. He did a very low level, like nobody knows about, pre-thing, which he legally had to do, and then when it was voted on again, it was permanent. This is going through. And everyone said, we never heard of this before. I can't go through. They'd have to discuss it with us. No, it was 6 months earlier, but you didn't know about it.
Wow.
And once that went through, now you have all the club people on the outside smoking cigarettes, making noise.
Right.
With a new law that says just me can complain about this one place a billion times, and it's going to count. And so now he really has control over the change of, the annoyance factor of these clubs, and he can really throw his weight around. These different departments that control that can throw their weight around. They don't have to say, well, the law says this. They can come over and say, just close now.
Wow.
Or just do this, or do what we said. Because there are a whole bunch of things they could pull out of their hat, like, oh, well, these things need to be done, or whatever. So now it turned into, in the 70s, I remember people were opening up clubs on a whim.
Right.
You didn't have to have a lot of money.
Yep.
You could, like the garage, construction parties paid for it. People opened up with very little money and a lot of ideas and creativity.
Yes, I
and
agree.
they could be open one night a week.
Yep.
Nothing else. Just, that was enough. Now there's so much money involved in, if you open up a club, it's so expensive to get through the hurdles.
Sure.
That you're not going to have any of those people involved, but you're going to have money people involved who have to have their turnover now, and hence the beginning of bottle service. And it's almost like if you have something good, you'll take the bottle service with it. You know, let's say Timmy Registry, you know, it's his club, but as shelter, he was not supporting, he's not paying the rent. He opened the doors to Green Room, which is a big success, but they're paying the bills. They call a lot of shots. He's making his way and going to make something happen, but it's a lot of compromising these days. And what you pointed out about a new glitzy club opens up, looks nice, the sound is nothing, music is an afterthought. Really, the experience in the place is, adequate at best, and it's unfortunate. It's not a casual situation. And just like New Year's in New York, you're scratching your head going, why did I do that? I know I won't do that again. I mean, it was a bad experience. And I worked too hard for that money to throw it away like that, you know. I went out for a good experience, not the opposite. And as far as a DJ, you're playing in that atmosphere. I mean, people would come into clubs in the opposite situation where they come in, I am so happy to be here.
Exactly.
I love what you're doing.
Exactly.
Now you walk into a place and it's a little like, I call it the New Year's syndrome. New York New Year's is one of the worst situations. Person walks in, and I don't care if you're playing their favorite song, they're like, this sucks, I'm unhappy, make it happen. Like, come on, turn on the magic wand, you know. And between the record industry and the community and all these things happening, then you have the influx of technology that basically is making everybody there's no such thing as patience anymore. Everyone is got to have it now. They want the short version, and it's, you know, if I saw it on my phone, I saw the whole thing. You know, like you say, I had this great experience. I did it. I saw it all. And they never left the house. They never talked to someone. They texted them, and it's brought things down to a level where, okay, I'm playing music for people. Is a different mentality going on? I'm not talking about just kids. I'm talking about the people I grew up with have changed. You have a short attention span, including myself, maybe less than some people, but I can't spend 12 hours in a club to wait for a song, you know, and I did before, and on a regular basis, and I had plenty of time to do a lot of things. Now if I go out something, I'm thinking about time, maybe I won't go because I don't have that time. When I look out at these clubs happening, that's why a weekly club is really difficult to happen. And when you do have something, it's like, boy, if it's a good thing and it's happening, that is very special. Because it used to just grow like the grass, you know, through the cement, and it didn't matter what it was. The city had like over 4,000 cabaret licenses, and they had double that in places that didn't have cabaret licenses. Everywhere was packed. There was people for everywhere that was happening all the time, 7 days a week. Now you're hard-pressed to make something happen once a month in a little place. A lot of these people have never experienced audiophile. I didn't really know what audiophile really was in the 70s that much. I knew it was great sound or it wasn't. But I didn't realize what an effect great sound had on you and your enthusiasm in music. Once you heard a song sounding that good, I don't care if you heard on AM radio, your mind always heard it that good from that point on. And if you never heard it that way, you really can't relate. It's you're missing something. And the idea that this music, so much of it to me, that's why I kept my enthusiasm, because there's so much music that made my hair stand on ends, that it moved me emotionally. I didn't like it the first time I heard it, and I grew to love it to a point where maybe I didn't jump up and down and scream and yell, but I walked away not being able to forget that moment or that song. Like, it stuck with me my whole life. It's hard to compare a contemporary hit-oriented, format of music to that, because that's an experience that blossoms and makes you a vinyl junkie or a musicaholic or a person that can't get enough. Yet today's music and the limits that it has are exactly what would make you, okay, what's next? I don't really need music. Like, what? Oh, we're going to go out to a club or bowling or a movie or do this. It's like, music is not that important to me. Why? And the whole idea that my experience with music, I'm thinking of bands, I'm thinking of vinyl, and looking at these record covers as I'm listening to it and hearing, the sound. If your whole experience is on your phone or in your computer or listening to MP3s that you don't even know the difference what an MP3 or wave is or what level of MP3 it is. It's like you don't know the amount of music that's missing.
Right.
And if that's all you're listening to is this genre of music at that level, it's like, that's the beginning of the end. It's like, why are you wasting your time with that? You're probably saying, music, but it's a waste of my time.
Wow, those are some excellent points, and I definitely share with you that the experience, I think, for myself and anyone that loves music or dabs into DJing, will fantasize in our basements or in our bedrooms, on listening at this song amplified, with the bass driving you, with the highs, and thinking that you're literally playing your heart out for people, and I think it's that experience that helps you just to relate to that song. I remember I went to one of the Body and Soul parties and you played Chris Coleman Shine. And even in house music, I think there's certain songs that I kind of like to label them as for me, because you don't think that other people enjoy it as much as you do. Like Mr. Fingers, What About This Love? Songs to me that I can literally turn off the lights, put up the volume, and those songs just put me a different level that I don't think, unless you really love the music, the lyrics, the way it's been composed, that you can really relate to it. And I was really drawn by how the people responded when you played that song. And it just reassured me that songs like this, producers like a Mr. Fingers, that I think really take their time to write from their soul, not to make a commercial song, but to make a song about a feeling or an emotion that they may be feeling. It just made me so happy to know that. And what's your take on music like Danny? Because I think one of the things that I really admire about your sets is you're not afraid to take a chance on something that doesn't sound like every other song or every other DJ, you know, because, and I'm talking just for myself. I followed a few DJs. I've seen a lot of DJs fall into a certain format without naming any names. And it's a shame because I think that these were DJs that we were looking up to, that we searched to see what they do next, how they represent this music that we love. And it's a shame because you pay top dollar to go see these guys, and in your mind you're like, wow, I could have stayed home and played my collection. And I don't get that from you. I get something different. I get across 130th Street, you know. I get you digging through the records and saying, wow, I haven't heard this. Let me play it because I'm sure there's a few people out there that relate to this. How do you keep that?
Well, it's a combination of things for me. Honestly, when I started, there really were no boundaries, and we played a really wide variety of things. And I thought the DJs that I admired in the beginning really broke a lot of, you know, walls. I mean, they did their most to give you as much as possible, not one thing. And I always felt that, like you said, you know, that I'm willing to take a chance. I'm thinking almost the opposite of I have to take a chance. Like, I'm not satisfied if I don't take enough of a chance. It's very unsatisfying for me. And I'm there to push it a bit and educate a little and take you on a journey. And the journey can't be this straight line. It's got to have some curves and ups and downs. I don't know, I feel like music is dynamic, and I always feel motivation to make people wear that on every level, with audio or choice and selection. I've got a huge record collection, but the more things I find, the more records I realize, the more I don't know. And when I'm digging for stuff for people, I feel like I could work 24/7. I could work so hard to pick for that. It'll never be enough.
Wow.
It's always the most I can do is really what I want to do.
Now, you've had the opportunity, I would say, lately to travel a lot more than before. How does that even open you to how these different countries, different nationalities are taking to house music? And not only house music, but I mean, I'm surprised, and I like to talk about Japan a lot because I think Japan has grown so much musically. You have so many collectors searching for classics out there that they pay top dollar for a classic song. And I'm just kind of overwhelmed the fact that here you have someone that doesn't know the language, that might really know the artist, but somehow is saying, I'm going to pay that $100, $200 for this 12-inch of, this classic song. And they go home and they enjoy it. What's your take on that? What have you seen in your travels? And is there something out there that makes you happy about knowing that this music has definitely crossed to these countries and expanded to a whole new different type of audience like you may not have expected?
Well, I think my introduction to Japan was pretty surprising. I traveled halfway across the world, and I wasn't expecting it to be on the level it was. But as I travel all around, I realize maybe just before I started traveling in the mid-90s, the world was quite a different place. Very separate and very, people had their own identities of this country, this and that. And as more time went on, it's a lot more westernized. So there's a lot less differences now than there, let's say, was when I started. It's more and more this one thing. And the music woes of, what I've experienced, the world has experienced. New York was kind of, for a long time, the starting point and the leader of what was happening. In a way, it still is, because all the woes and the bad things that are happening in the music industry and environment here are spreading around the world.
Oh, wow.
Some places quicker than others, but there's all the things we talked about in general are working their way into the world climate, and those are the best places. Now you go some other places, let's say I play in somewhere like Singapore. One of the things I quickly realized is some of these people, they're educated, so they know music, what they've read, but music culture is relatively a new thing in Singapore. Classics probably extend 7-8 years. I mean,
Gotcha.
They don't. To them, the difference between something 5 years and 25 years, it's all the same. But 5 years is something that they grew up with, or from the beginning of going out.
Gotcha.
And for me, I mean, I have this wide spectrum, and it's a little limiting. I feel that's not the best place for me to play. I'm limited to just playing new things because that's what works. I think there are little pockets in Europe and UK, around the world, that a little more sophisticated, a little more knowledgeable, almost nerdy about it with the music, and they're very educated about things, and they're a great audience to play for. But I would have to say Japan is really on another level higher, that they've been so into this for such a long time that now if I, like for instance, when I was just in Japan, I'll play a few classics and they like good music. It doesn't matter if it's a little worn out or not. They just like it. It's good or it's not good. And genre too. They like good music. They're ready to go with drum bass or whatever it is. Like just if it's a cohesive, like the way it works, it's great. And for the same respect, they like classics. Like to them, like the best new record is some classic that's great that they haven't heard before.
Oh wow!
And here I am in a packed club, and I'm putting on something like Bobby Womack, I Feel a Groove coming on. Okay, since that record came out, I mean, maybe in the Walk when it first came out, got a good response, but over the years, I love that record, and some of my friends love that record, and when I play it, a few people love it, and for the most part, people don't know it, and I never get a peak response from it. I get a good response. Maybe by the end of the record, people go, oh, that was good.
Right.
But you wouldn't know it from looking at the floor. And in Japan, I throw this on in the club, it's a packed club, and 2 or 3 bars into the record, they're screaming. Like this is what we want to hear.
Wow.
And I played a few things like that, and I'm thinking, I'm a little jealous because, it's hard for me to get that kind of response here at home.
Yes, sure.
I mean, people I grew up with don't give me that response.
Right.
So Japan's a little unique, and it's funny because they see themselves as a little controlled and not free. Like they look at New Yorkers like, God, these people, really dancing and letting loose. But in Japan, they're screaming and going nuts. They're funny with dancing though. I grew up here where everyone got their own dance.
Yeah.
Very different and all that. Really unique dancers. I go to this place in Paris, has the dancers. The night starts out and the dancers come in, really good dancers. Like as good as I've seen. But as I'm watching, I realize, wait a minute, this is a club full of dancers. They're all doing this one dance. They're all dancing alike. They learned it from one person, and that's all they do. It looks like a Peanuts video, it's kind of funny. And in Japan, there's a similarity there. They actually go to schools for dancing and learn, from the New York dancers, like how to do it. And, some people just do whatever, and some people really dance. But the real dancers, they all have a little bit of a contrived, like it's one thing, not their own style.
Gotcha. I think also though, from what I've seen on some of the YouTube videos, I think some of the audio components travel to Japan as well. Like I was doing Yuri, for instance, just to see who came up, and there's this great commercial of a Japanese guy going into his apartment, really excited, right? So I'm thinking, okay, so they're not only taking the love of classics, but they're also opening up their doors to sound, right?
Well, it's a little bigger than both of those things. They have adopted Western culture we've got to have it more and better. So it's really across the board. So when you're in Japan, you realize they're more extreme shopaholics. They really, the stores are on a different level than here of intensity of what you buy and the detail. When they do things, let's say, it's a Western culture, they're trying to do it better. Not always they do, but they're putting everything into it.
Have you been surprised by a sound system out there?
Not anymore. They're always like fantastic.
Let's move on to a little bit of your thoughts on radio stations.
On radio?
Yeah. What do you think are the chances of them giving the dance music a chance again? I mean, I know you have VLS kind of doing the whole thing with Josh and Little Louis Vega on Friday nights, I think it is. I feel that again they were very supportive of what was happening years ago. You had major DJs as Frankie Crocker, stations that were supporting what the music was doing, really taking the time to go out and see what's happening outdoors, and introducing that to the vast majority. Do you think that it's still a money issue with all of these radio stations kind of following the same format throughout and not taking a chance? And do you think that they would ever try to do something exclusively for us?
It honestly, their money is a big issue. It's a little similar to the record companies as they were on top for a while. Radio stations were enjoying a lot of success, but internet and the lack of music enthusiasm has really cut into the need, to have kind of format that's educating or specialized. It seems not just BLS, but just across the board, radio is turned into a little like what you see in what's left of record stores. It's all the number ones and greatest hits, and it's 1,001 new versions of the greatest hits, The idea that they're going to do something special seems so drop in the bucket or momentary, because it's never going to be like it was back then, of the kind of success where they can go, we have to do more of this. It's usually a really tough road just to hang on to that little bit of it. If they're doing a good format now, or they're, have Friday night and doing something like that, I feel really great if that just lasts for a while. But the idea that that's going to spread, I'm hard pressed to think it wouldn't, because the atmosphere doesn't lend itself to that, and I don't think that they're that invested in doing what's right or interesting or groundbreaking. It is about money.
Wow. So I mean, you're left with few choices if you're starting out at this age to really want to know the whole house music scene, right?
Well, I think that the emphasis has really been stolen away from radio and is on the internet now. When you talk about information and listen to music,
yep.
I think you're going to get what you want on the internet and very rarely get what you want on the radio. And the internet has really endless point of possibilities, where radio is really limited.
Right.
And it's going to stay that way or get worse. I mean, I think it's it's seen its day. I think just like the post office, versus internet.
True.
You can't compare it to what it was.
Right. Do you think
when I growing up, I was completely AM radio with WWRL. I really was influenced by a lot of that music, and even pop stations. And when WBLS came out, and it came out in stereo, and Frankie Crocker was right there and really pushing the boundaries of music, it was a huge influence on me. Across the board, influenced my music development and everything. I just can't see anything even close to that now.
Do you think an internet house music station, do you think it would have enough support by established individuals such as yourself, labels that could possibly take off? Or do you feel that there's also kind of like a everyone for themselves type of attitude with whoever's left on top to support?
It's definitely a little bit of the everyone for themselves attitude. I think that there's the unexpected success of this is worldwide and opened up, that there's potential for a growth, an unexpected growth, because who could ever see the growth of something like Facebook or Twitter, or
sure.
YouTube or
yep.
Skype,
yep.
All these things, you can't predict, and I think music and the internet, it's a different animal, where it's not about this station, this personality. It's about this diversity and this openness of all of them together, rather than this one thing. And maybe out of that, because it creates a community of listeners, that one thing or a particular group of things can excel and become groundbreaking or big. It's just right now, it's too young.
It's too young.
Yeah.
would you be a part of something like that if it was to happen? Would you consider maybe
I
providing?
would consider it. I don't think I could compare it to what I do. People used to always think to me, "Oh, you're a DJ. You know, what station you play at?" No, I play for clubs. Well, don't you want to do this? Play for radio? And I'd be like, well, you know, not to knock what they do, but I like what I do. I don't want to play for a wall and have to guess who's listening or whatever, or see it on paper or
Right.
whatever. I play for an audience that their response gives me and I give them. And that's what I like. The idea that I might embrace internet in a similar way, I think, well, times have changed. I want to be diverse and open to things. Different situations can happen, and I think given the right situation, I would embrace it.
Excellent. One last thing. Oh, wow. Two more questions, Danny, I promise. I know we've been talking for a while now. You talked about I want to talk about your involvement with Billboard.
Uh-huh.
And the other day I was talking to some friends about, back then you had magazines, you had Billboard, you had charts that one could kind of follow to know what was happening out on the dance scene.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get involved in Billboard, and what do you consider nowadays something that a young house head can follow besides a track source or the digital companies that are out there that list the music? What's out there that you can nowadays relate to as far as who's doing what producers doing music-wise?
Let's start with the way I got into it was when in the mid-'70s when I was DJing, I was reading a bunch of things, following different charts and things, and Record World was a big deal at that time, and Vince Aletti was writing the column for that, and a friend of a friend suggested me as a DJ report to Record World. And at that time, I guess I was kind of compiling lists and getting into having a list. So I was submitting my list to different magazines as I got to know different people in the industry. Billboard came a little later, and I've been a Billboard reporter now, I don't know, I guess going on like 25, 30 years.
Wow.
Since the early 80s. And I feel like back then Billboard was very relative to what was happening. The dance chart and the sales chart were kind of similar, you know. Now they have no relationship at all.
Right.
You know, the club chart just has nothing to do with sales. And when I'm always looking for knowing more and following lists and finding out more. And my suggestion, as opposed to just track source, which is helpful because that's what everyone is buying from and listening to, is people's top tens in track source, and then you go further and you're kind of seeking out individuals, their lists or their taste, as, you know what, I really like what this person plays. If they're playing something I don't know, I need to find out what that is. I miss the whole community of who I was running into getting music, as I go to record companies and all the DJs run into each other. We tell stories. We talk about the hot record. Did you hear this? And, you know, being a record pool, the same thing. Without all that, that community's gone, and without even the record stores of meeting like that, you're really hard pressed to learn about things the right way, rather than a list or what a site is telling you to listen to. The idea that these guys that I respect are all on this record, not even one of them, but all these guys I respect are all on this one record I don't know yet. I gotta get that record.
Right.
And now, I mean, the format of how it's changed, if I learn about something I need and I go to TrackSource or iTunes or whatever it's on, the idea that I have to decide, oh, I do love this record in 30 seconds, it's just not adequate. It's I'm much more into the person who suggested it or the fact that they're hot on it versus me hearing only 30 seconds of something. I can't decide on that.
So how do you buy music, Danny? Just from
I tell you,
people giving
for
you
a long
stuff?
time I buy it unsuccessfully, where I overbuy a lot of stuff that I say sounded good in the store or
Exactly.
sounded good in 30 seconds, but I'm not playing this.
Right.
And I feel like I want to have everything possible that I think could be important.
Right.
So I'm overbuying, which is unfortunate. I wish I could just pick the ones I want. But if I get to that mentality, then I'm probably going to miss out on a lot of important things.
Sure.
And what I've learned now, especially, is if it's good, you got to get it now. It could be so deleted and not there tomorrow.
Right.
And especially, I buy a lot of vinyl still.
Yeah.
And if you're not there when it comes out, you might never get it.
Yeah. I think you hit a very important point with the whole relationship that you build at a record store. You build it with the DJ, you build it with the sales, who's there. It's just a totally different experience. And I mean, friends and myself, we used to make the whole day. You had your record hopping. You went from one store to another because you knew this store might get this that so and so forth may not have. And I mean, also I think the opportunities for the individuals that worked at a record store, that's a different topic on its own, but they were looked at as someone that had an ear for your style.
And we're in the center of things.
Exactly. I mean, I remember Adam Scott, at Dance
Phil D.
Vinyl Mania, Phil D. Who was the first guy at Vinyl Mania?
The first guy?
Yeah. Was Manny in Vinyl Mania as well?
Yeah, Manny.
Manny was there, right?
Manny, Pal Joey was.
Al Joe,
Manny.
yeah. I mean, so many producers came out of there.
Alex Alvarez.
Yeah, Alex Alvarez.
Stewart.
Yeah.
Jamal.
Yeah, Jamal. That's Jamal. Yeah, exactly. So it was a great experience for me too. To go out and meet and run into somebody that, oh my God, what is he listening to? I definitely need that copy. And it's definitely a shame if again you never had that opportunity to experience that. It just brought the community closer. You knew about parties. You never knew what opportunity could come out of there. Nowadays you just don't get that anymore. That's half of it is left out. It's kind of like
more than half. I mean,
not as personal as what it used to
it's
be.
not. There's a contact. There's a way of dealing with people and finding out more than just the music, but a whole bunch of information that's relative and attitudes and it's really a sense of community. The idea that I was going out to all these places, that was part of my promotion. I mean, I was talking about things and I was getting their promotion and learning about things. The idea that someone now is not going to talk to other people, only buy what they hear on a computer, it's so limiting. And then on top of it all, it's so unsatisfying. I went out to a record store and I did these things, or I went to a record company, it was a good experience like any other experience. I went out to do something. I went to this because I liked it. And I go to record stores not just to find the record I'm looking for, but I like doing it. It's an experience. I go to a website or I go on the internet and, let's say, do the equivalent. I don't like it. I could find the exact thing I'm looking for, and yet I hate the experience. It's not a satisfying experience. It's flat. And the idea that you're going out and you're out and you're going somewhere and you're doing something physically and your senses are awake says a lot. You know, to replace that with, I have to do a lot of getting my music on the net, along with the fact that when I'm done, there's another half of this which, as a, let's say, a successful DJ, it's really a problem for me that I went to the store, I bought the record, I brought them home, I have them, I take them to work. I might put them in order, I might do something to, you know, listen in a certain, you know, catalog in a certain way. But basically, I own the record, I take it with me. It's right there. Visually, I know where it is. I buy something online, more often than not, I thought I have it with me. Oh, I downloaded it, but I didn't burn it, and I didn't put it in with this stuff. And when I look at it, instead of an album cover or something I can, you know, click onto, it's a little abbreviated sentence that just eludes me. And it's like this stress of trying to just keep up with the stuff that I actually think I'm on top of. And it's like, wow, I went through all the trouble to get that new music that was really important, and I don't even have it with me tonight. Wow. You know, or I didn't have the time to label it and put it in a way that I'm even reading it properly. Right. It's just type. Yep. Or it's handwritten. Yep. And, you know, before, I don't care if it was, I never appreciated white labels except test pressing. But I like artwork or something that has an identity. And that stuff is, you know, very underrated.
Talking about artwork and stuff, I mean, your t-shirts represent a big, you know, identity of looking at your flyer, knowing exactly what the song is. And I know you pride in that. I think I read in one of your other interviews how you kind of, you are the one that makes sure that all of this artistically gets done the right way. Why is that so important to you still?
Well, I think I was always aware of that, and I tried to be involved with that early on. But when 718 Sessions started, I had a partner, and so I kind of left it at, you know, he knew about flyers and promoting. I put it in his hands, and the kind of people that were making the flyers, they're affordable, but they really were not doing a good job for us. And I thought, our party has a very specific identity, and yet they're giving us a really low-level generic design that doesn't fit us and is not even good for something else. It really was not a good design. We were trying different people. They all were low level. And I was really aggravated that we spent all this time with them to get it right. I thought it was expensive, and we still didn't walk away with what we thought was acceptable. And we went through about 6 or 8 months of this, and it culminated with a New Year's party where they gave us something that looked like a bad rave party. And I just said, you know, to Benny, I said, look, I got an idea. Let me kind of take this over. I can't do anything worse, and we'll probably save money. And I thought, you know what? For all this trying to be original with artwork, a lot of what I do is represented by these old records. they're 20 and 30 years old. Nobody's going to mind if I borrow the image and put it on this.
Right.
And I'll incorporate it with our party and whatever, and just throw different things out there and work on it. And right away, it just seemed like, well, this is great artwork. That's what it was that made the album cover.
Yep.
So all of a sudden, it's appreciated at another level, and very quickly it took on this identity of, you know, there's even a small collection of them, like, wow, this is really kind of you know, what the party's about. Like, this is the flavor, what you expect. And I think now we've done, you know, I've done like well over 100 flyers, and when I go out there looking at other flyers, I'm always looking at flyers and looking for something interesting. There's a lot less than there used to be because of the stores, but there's so few that are interesting. You know, once in a while something really grabs me, but a lot of things are done generically, and I think that's a reason not to do a flyer. You know, it's got to have a personality or have something special get your attention, or especially in this climate, there's no reason to make a flyer.
Right.
And now the climate is pretty rough as far as where do you hand these things out. We
Sure.
could do without actually making physical flyers and just do the internet. But, you know, it's a compromise. Really see that we spend a little to make the flyers, but they are an identity of the party, and some people like to have them, and it creates a little bit of a connection.
Sure.
And I think at this point, I'm going to tell Benny, like, you know, I've saved all these flyers because we don't use them all. I'll probably offer something people like, you know, like sell little collections like 100 flyers or something.
That'd be a great idea.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get into that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they really are a good collection.
Yes.
I'm pretty proud of them.
Yeah, let me know if I'll be the first one to buy, because I definitely love those flies. I thought the idea was fantastic. And even some albums that I lost through the years is like, oh man, I remember this, you know? So it's definitely wonderful to have.
It's great. Once in a while I stump people and they're like, can't figure out what this is.
What do you see as far as the future for you and for the current music, Danny? Where do you see all of this evolving?
I see it being so less predictable than it used to be. Things move at lightning speed. There's very little of that something is going to last forever kind of thing. That when I started, there was still a lot of things that have been around for years, and you thought, if I'm doing this, it could go on for years. I hope I can roll with things and keep riding it. I think that what has become now, there's definitely a niche for what I'm into and the level of enthusiasm for this kind of music. I think I can maintain that, and I'll be very happy with that, as opposed to it's got to be bigger and better. It's, like I said, you need more of a community, which doesn't exist, and maybe at some point it will be bigger, and there'll certainly be some unexpected terms that I would never have thought of.
Right.
You know, in 1980, someone interviewed me and said, okay, in 20 years, what do you think you'll be playing if you're playing for a young audience? And the first thing I said was, 20 years? God, I'll be ancient. Can't imagine still DJing 20 years from now. I was laughing, and I said, well, okay, 20 years from now, I'm playing for a young audience. I wouldn't find it hard to imagine that I could play something at the level of a beat with a squeak, and people actually running up to me and saying,
"What's the song?
Where do I get that?" And at that time, that was a pretty insightful.
Yeah. You was almost right on.
Yeah, for 20 years later. But now, I'd be hard-pressed to say something 5 years later in comparison, because things move too fast.
Yeah.
And there are too many unpredictable turns that you could never pull that really change everything. So we'll see. All I know is like I have been, I'm really dedicated to music, and I'm happy just to be in it.
Excellent. Your passion definitely shows in everything that you do, Danny. This is kind of a question I'm just going to throw out there. You're free to answer it or not. Do any of the other main DJs, do you think, share or are as passionate at what you do?
I think definitely so, but obviously there are a lot of DJs that are very successful, people I'm very close to, that may be a little less passionate, or maybe a little more affected by their own path. I've had my path that's created who I am and what I do and how I feel about it. Their path is quite different, and maybe in their shoes I wouldn't be the same person, but they have a different set of enthusiasms and a different way to express it, what they really are passionate about.
Right.
There's certainly a lot of people passionate out there, and frankly, it's less of the big guys.
Right.
I think that the guys that have gotten big, just like anything that gets big, there's a lot of compromise to get there.
I got
and
you.
a lot of distractions to be there.
I got you.
So that takes away from it. You know, the other day, like this friend of mine, he did something outdoors where it's his party, and I know he's really into DJing, very passionate, but it was his sound system. And I know he really didn't play that day. He didn't worry about the sound system. That was his focus, and it took away from everything else. And I feel a lot of these guys are have compromised their involvement with other things, that their success of making records or traveling or a certain image progressing this way, or whatever lifestyle, or they got married and they have a different life, or different things. I think a lot of the big guys that are successful suffer mostly from that, and then maybe a select few of others that just, they really didn't have the passion to begin with, and so it's very obvious now.
Right. Right.
Those really aren't people in my circle.
Right.
The people in my circle are generally all pretty passionate.
Excellent.
I can't relate to them if they're not.
I got you. How do you inspire a new producer, a new label owner, to continue in such a tough industry, and even a DJ, and I'll be honest, even I sometimes, and I reach to you sometimes for inspirational words. Just how do you continue? How do you continue when everything around you kind of gives up, and opportunities are less and less, and you're reaching to someone that you look up to, but that door gets shut on your face? What do you encourage them to do?
Well, different people, I would say different things. If you've been doing this a while, I'd have to say lower your sights, because it ain't what it used to be.
Gotcha.
And diversify. Be open to some other things, because to do what you want to do, you might have to do some other things to make it all work. And so you have to be open to different things. I don't have a lot of positive things to say to people in that industry, because I feel it's not the best time, and Like, for instance, people ask me why don't I have a record label, and I think, well, if I started in the 70s, yeah, it'd been great. Maybe even by the 80s. But when I seriously started thinking about it in the 90s, it was already beginning to be not a good time.
Right.
And I almost think, just like what I would suggest for myself, I have a hard time suggesting for other people. The whole positive side of it. My positive approach to it is have less expectations and do it for the love of it, because if you're in this for money, you should be in something else. I think the whole record label thing, I hope you have some other avenues, some other ways of thinking of it, because even without the aspect of making money, that's a rough thing to be in right now.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you even just make it work? You know, I gotta say to all the people that are doing it, I give them props, because that's a tough job.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely, I think the days of going, selling 100,000 copies to maybe selling 200 nowadays is definitely a serious reality check that someone has to take in consideration.
Selling 200.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny when you think in the height of this, I mean, most, major labels, they made 5,000 and 10,000 promotional copies.
Yep.
They gave out, and now somebody thinks 300 copies is a success.
Yes, that's
to
true.
sell.
Yep.
So it's quite a different thing.
Well, I want to thank you for your time, Danny, and keep doing everything that you're doing, because there's people out there that truly appreciate it, like myself and my friends, and I hope to interview you later again and see where you're at that point of your life, and hopefully we'll have a good conversation as well. Thank you very much for your time, Danny.
You're welcome. Thank you.